Welcome to Dust to Grace, where gumption meets grace and real life gets lived out loud. I am so glad you're here. Last week I told you about the arena going quiet. The rodeo is over, the boys are gone, and how much surrender it took to sit in that silence. But surrender isn't a one-time moment. It's something you have to keep choosing. Because once the arena goes quiet, life doesn't stay quiet for long. Your own mind gets loud instead. And that's where this episode picks up. I want to tell you a story about my youngest boy. You want to know how good my youngest boy was at pulling me back to my frontal lobe? Let me give you two examples. The oldest boy was in town at school, and I needed to pick him up from school. Now, I have always pushed my time to the very limit. So I was speeding through our little town, and sure enough, the town cop pulled me over. I got so worked up, I nearly started crying right there in front of the officer, giving him the whole overzealous story about why I was late. He let me off with a warning, and I stuck it on my dash, "Thank you, officer," and took right back off, speeding again. A few blocks later, it hit me. If I don't slow down, I'm going to end up with a whole handful of these tickets. And from the back seat, my youngest preschool-aged kid pipes up, "Mom, I got a great idea. Do you want to hear it?" And I said, "Sure, honey." He says, "Mom, just slow down." Out of the mouths of babes, that little guy had more frontal lobe sense at 4 years old than I did as a grown woman with a warning ticket on my dash. Then there was the time we drove to the bigger town for one of his doctor's appointments. We walked into the mall right past those vendor kiosks in the middle of the mall, and one of them talked me into a purchase I did not need and could not really justify. The whole drive home, I was antagonizing over it, beating myself up, replaying it, feeling sick about the money. And my youngest, once again, from that same small voice of wisdom, says, "Mom, you bought it, the money is gone, you might as well enjoy the product, but would you please learn your lesson and don't let people do that to you again." He wasn't even in school full-time yet, and he already knew how to say in kid language exactly what my frontal lobe needed to hear to make it stop looping. The thing is done. Learn and move forward. So when I tell you the ache of watching that same boy grow up and get ready to leave home hits me every single day, I hope you understand why. He didn't just grow up next to me. In some ways, he grounded me. That boy is over 30 years old now. He's been on the pro rodeo trail for 10 years. He is married now too. Has a wife who is building a life right alongside him. He is capable, growing, out there living the life he was meant for, with someone by his side. What else can a mother want? And still, some piece of that ache from the day he left for college has never fully gone away. It softens, and it doesn't grip me the way it used to, but it never really leaves. I think that's something nobody tells you about motherhood. You picture the goodbye as one hard day you get through, and then you're on the other side of it, but it's not really like that. The ache just changes shape. It gets quieter. It stops showing up at the wrong moment, but every now and then, watching him load up for another rodeo, seeing a picture from the road, or thinking about he and his wife building their own life together, thinking back to that little voice in the back seat telling me to just slow down. It's right there again, just as real as it was the day he packed his room. And I think that's actually important to say out loud, because if you're in the thick of it right now, your baby just left or is about to, I don't want to tell you it's going to go away. I want to tell you it softens. It becomes something you carry instead of something that knocks you over. And somehow, that is still grace, my friends. When I was a little girl, maybe 6 or 7 or 8 years old, Mom and Dad would be out working, running errands, whatever that needed to be done that particular day. And before my brother and I got home from school, Mom and Dad would leave a list on the table. Feed the chickens, vacuum, fold the laundry, get the dishwasher ready for the evening. Simple stuff, waiting for us by the time we walked in from school. But here's what actually happened. We walked in the door and turned on the TV first. Gilligan's Island, The Andy Griffin Show, and My Three Sons. And somewhere in there, my brother and I would start picking at each other. We'd fight for almost 45 minutes, right up until about a half an hour before Mom and Dad were due to come home. It was just like a switch flipped. We would be best friends, and in that last 30 minutes, we'd fly through that whole list. And by the time Mom and Dad got home and walked in, they had no idea of any of it. I didn't have words for it then. But looking back, I think that was some of my earliest training in living out of my amygdala instead of my frontal lobe. Anxious energy with nowhere to go, under the pressure of time, forced us to actually get grounded and get to work. Fast forward a lot of years. My youngest son was picking up his room, getting ready to leave for college, and he asked me for help. And in the middle of it, I suddenly needed to clean the bathroom. Not later, right then. And he looked at me and said, "Mom, what are you doing? I thought you were helping me. Now, you're going to clean the bathroom?" And that's when it hit me. That was the same pattern. My amygdala had taken over. And instead of sitting with what I was actually feeling, my baby leaving, I reached for the nearest bright, shiny task I could control. A clean bathroom was something I could finish. Him leaving wasn't. 2 stories, decades apart, same wiring, and I think that's true for a lot of us. When the frontal lobe goes quiet and the amygdala takes the wheel, we don't always fight or freeze. Sometimes we just clean the bathroom. And that doesn't just show up with big things like a child leaving. It shows up in the small everyday moments too. Even this week, I sat down to work on our home budget, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. Bills were coming due, and it was important. But instead, I found that bright, shiny object. I found myself pulling out the junk mail, sorting it, organizing paperwork that hadn't nothing to do with what I sat down to do. And here is the strange part. I actually found something important in that pile, information I didn't even know was sitting right there. That isn't why I went digging. I went digging because the budget made me anxious, and the junk mail didn't. Why do we do this? Why, when something matters most, do we suddenly find every bright, shiny object in the room instead? Here's what I've learned. Dr. Daniel Amen's research talks about different brain types, and one of them is what he calls the cautious brain, or type 5. It tends to run hot in the anxiety centers of the brain. The amygdala, the basal ganglia, areas that fire up around uncertainty and risk. People with this brain type are often high achievers, prepared, motivated, but that same wiring that makes them driven also makes them prone to worry and to freeze up when something feels too big or too important. And when the brain senses this matters, this could go wrong, it doesn't always send us towards the task. Sometimes it sends us straight to the nearest thing we can control instead of a stack of junk mail, a clean bathroom, and anything that gives the brain a small, safe win. It's not laziness. It's not lack of discipline. It is fear wearing the costume of productivity. The bright, shiny object isn't the problem. It's the symptom. The real question underneath it is always the same. What am I actually afraid of right now? And can I sit with that instead of running from it? That's the shift. Not stop being distracted, but notice what the distraction is protecting you from. Because power doesn't come from avoiding the hard thing. It comes from naming the fear and taking a breath and turning back to face the budget, the empty room, the goodbye, whatever it is. I'll be honest with you about something I've been noticing in my life right here with this very podcast. There's a lot of moving parts to putting an episode together. The preparation, the setting aside real time to record, and then getting it ready to actually go live. I've noticed a cycle in myself that reminds me of a college kid who knows they should study a little every day, but instead crams the night before for the test. When I actually work on pieces of the episode, little at a time, and spread it through several days, the whole thing goes much smoother, and I enjoy it so much more. It doesn't feel heavy. And here's what I've really noticed. There's a real sense of confidence that comes from that. Not the fake kind, the kind that actually feels earned. I heard a saying recently that stuck with me. Confidence isn't something you just have. It is something you develop by stepping forward into your fear. It's the doing that creates the confidence, not the other way around. We tend to think we need to feel confident first and then we'll act. But it's backwards, my friends. Action comes first. Confidence is what's waiting for you on the other side of that action. But more often than I'd like to admit, I let the anxiety about an episode hang out there instead of I let it build, and I keep reaching for the bright, shiny objects. Business task, TV, even sleep, anything that isn't the podcast until the anxiety gets so uncomfortable that the discomfort itself finally becomes bigger than the fear of the work. And that's when I finally set the distractions down and get it done. So here's what I want you to hear in that. Sometimes the bright, shiny object isn't just one moment, like a clean bathroom or a pile of junk mail. Sometimes it's a whole season of avoidance, days even, where we let the anxiety pile up instead of facing it a little at a time. And the relief we feel when we finally do the work isn't really relief from finishing the task at all. It's relief from putting down the fear. The lesson I keep having to relearn is this. I don't have to wait until the discomfort is unbearable before I act. I can step into the small piece of fear on day one and let the confidence build itself, one small act of courage at a time. That's the real gold at the end of the rainbow. Not the finished episode. The person I become by doing the hard thing anyway. So here's where all of this lands for me. The cop and the speeding ticket. the mall purchase I couldn't undo, cleaning the bathroom instead of packing my boys' room, the junk mail instead of the budget, the cramming instead of the steady daily work on this very podcast. Different moments, different seasons of my life, but every single one of them was my amygdala reaching for something safe instead of my frontal lobe leading me toward what actually mattered. And I don't think I'm alone in this. I think this is deeply, wonderfully human. Our brains are wired to protect us from discomfort, even when the discomfort is exactly where our growth is waiting, my friends. The good news is awareness changes everything. Once you can see the pattern, once you can say, there's that bright, shiny object again, you've already started reclaiming your frontal lobe. I've already started building confidence instead of running from fear. Scripture tells us in James, consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything. That's it, right there. God isn't asking us to avoid the hard, anxious moments. He's using them. The speeding tickets, the empty bedrooms, the budgets we're scared to face to grow us into who we're becoming. And I want you to know, I am walking this right alongside you. I am not having this figured out. I am a woman who has cleaned a bathroom instead of saying goodbye, who still catches herself reaching for the junk mail instead of the budget. But I'm also a woman who is learning, little by little, to turn and face the fear instead of running from it. And every time one of you reaches out, shares your own story, or tells me an episode met you right where you were, that is part of my growth too. Truly. Thank you for walking this road with me. We are in this together, growing a little more grounded, a little more courageous, one small step at a time. So how do I actually keep myself out of that anxiety loop day by day, moment by moment? For me, it comes down to pattern, real protected pattern, especially first thing in the morning. But it's not just the morning routine. Sometimes it's catching myself right in the moment, the same way my youngest boy taught me to do all those years ago. I'm an early riser, and I've learned I need that sense of order right out of the gate, or the whole day can trip sideways into an anxiety mode before I've even had my coffee. So every morning starts the same way. My devotional first, before anything else pulls at me. I sit down with that. Then I walk my dogs, moving my body, getting outside before the day's noise starts crowding in. Then I do chores, then getting ready for work. And here's a small thing that makes a bigger difference than you might think. I make my bed the second I get up. Sounds simple, I know. But if I make that bed right away, 3/4 of my bedroom is already clean and ready for the day, without me even trying. It's one small win, one thing, before anxiety has a chance to hand me a shiny object to chase instead. But the pattern only carries me so far. The rest of it is moment by moment, catching myself mid-spiral, the same way that little voice in the back seat caught me. Mom, just slow down. Mom, your money is gone. Enjoy it and learn your lesson. I still have to say those same kinds of things to myself now as a woman in the middle of an anxious moment. Notice the bright, shiny object. name what I'm actually avoiding, and gently, without shame, turn myself back towards what actually matters. None of this is complicated. It's not a 5-step system or anything fancy. It's pattern in the morning and awareness in the moment, small and steady, repeatable things that tell my brain, we are safe, we are grounded, we know what we're doing today. That's really it. Nothing dramatic, just showing up morning after morning and moment after moment so that when the hard, anxious moments come, an empty bedroom, a scary budget, a hard episode to record, I've already built the muscle of coming back to steady instead of running from it. Hope, breathe, lean, believe, and grow. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're one breath away from the life Grace has for you. Real stories, real struggle, real grace. Take the breath. Lean in. I'm Lisa Anders, and I'll see you next time. Have a grace-filled day.